Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Pham, a very proud student at class 11 in TedxHanoiAmsterdamHS for the gifted. Today I'm Today I am ecstatic to be standing here on the stage of Orange Space Pham to be delivering my very own speech at our school's inaugural TEDx event. So when you hear the name Hanoi Amsterdam, what image pop up in their mind? Recently, for some, that might be a controversy with a Karen arguing on Facebook, but that shouldn't be the case. For me, the images of superstar students with the highest possible GPAs, the high standardized test scores, like I'm close friends with 1,600 SAT, and also some guy has 9.0 IELTS. It is incredible, spectacular students. And also people who are amazing as extracurriculars. So many presidents. But one aspect of AMS that I think is not nearly as discussed as much is what if those extraordinary accomplishments are the peak of those individuals' personal development. So that leads into the topic of my speech today with the phrase, do not peak in high school. So, to demonstrate my idea, I decided to draw out a graph, which is present on the slides, but I don't really think it's necessary to look and ponder upon the image on the slides, because it's a graph, a shape that is all familiar to all of you. It's a parabola taught in the curriculums of high school around our nation and also around the world. So the point of a parabola being there's a peak, the highest point, and I decided to label that peak being the entirety of high school itself. Now, this implies two things. The first being that after a peak, there must come a downfall, right? Which I call the downward spiral. The development, it just declines exponentially until it's down the drain, like Hong Dang's acting career. And the second thing that it implies is that the potential is therefore severely stunted. How can you become the best version of themselves, when he or she is already exists in history in previous years? So I decided to delve more into this concept by dividing it into two cases. The first one being a short-term case. Instead of having the entirety of high school itself being at the highest point, I label it as a specific event being the high school entrance exam, and more specifically being when you receive the results to see whether you got into the dream high school or not. For me, that was AMS. And before entering AMS, there was a long period of constantly bearing oneself, honing their skills, doing numerous mock tests to achieve the desirable outcome after a lot of effort. But then, after that highest peak, the slope, it was originally much higher than zero, right? But then it becomes zero at the peak. Then it fell down a lot, becomes a negative number, and the downward spiral starts. For me, that was most synonymous with the word complacency. As during my grade 10, instead of just jumping straight into AMS, we were making much more friends and experiences. We were, of course, held back by the big villain of them all, COVID-19, with the pandemic forcing online learning and the development of students not being as natural as it usually is. So instead of truly bettering myself constantly day after day, I got stuck in a dopamine loop of just constantly scrolling social media like YouTube and playing mobile games or gacha games like League of Legends. Right, next. Which is obviously quite bad, right? But that's in the short term case. But I'd also like to examine is the long-term scenario where the peak is not the entry of high school, but now the graduation. When after you graduate, people expect big things from you for the future, right? But more often than not, their future after high school, like college and even their adult life, it might be a massive disappointment. And let's examine the four consequences of this. These consequences are not only of the long term, but also the short term as well. The first being stagnation. By stagnation, I don't mean the economic sense of the word, but rather a decline of their development and their personal skills. Like if they're learning to become an engineering student and become a successful engineer in the future, then a stagnation would be that you stop improving skills and instead focus on other aspects which focuses too much on dopamine. Instead, like for me, I'll take the example of myself, which was that I got into both the advanced mathematics and English classes of Hanoi Amsterdam. But with mathematics, it's a story synonymous with burnout, because after 3 or 4 years of constantly grinding, my motivation just dropped down exponentially, and I couldn't stomach the thought of grinding away at mathematics anymore. So that's why I moved to English. But yeah, I think the first consequence is synonymous with burnout, and the second one being missed opportunities, and it can also be interpreted as opportunity cost. For me, the first half of my 3 years in high school is characterized by an unhealthy obsession to reach the pinnacle of SAT and IELTS, which I did manage to achieve. My scores were sufficient to get into my colleges, but I was just agonized with the scores of my friends and others, which fostered an unhealthy mindset in myself of always over-worrying about peer pressure instead of focusing on myself. And during that time, I missed a lot of opportunities, like chances to improve my communicating skills or team building or team leadership skills. The third and fourth consequences, I think, go quite hand in hand, with them being a difficulty to adapt to change and an unrealistic perception of yourself. For these two phenomena, I would like to build two characters. First, the star basketball player of high school and the homecoming queen, for example. They might be the hottest commodities in their limited environment, area, time frame of high school, but after college and then entering the workforce, the perception of themselves might have built up too much of an ego for them, and they have great difficulty adapting to change and can't really adapt to start from the bottom up, from the bottom of the food chain up to the top. So, with those four consequences out of the way, I would like to now name three quite successful men. The first being Mr. Richest in the world right now, the man behind SpaceX, Tesla, and more recently Twitter, Mr. Elon Musk. And the other two are the richest man in Vietnam, Mr. Pham, the founder of Vingroup, and an ARMS alumni, Mr. Nguyễn Dai, who's the founder of the mobile group, as it's known internationally. So why did I bother to name drop these three men? Well, I think there's a common thread that links these three men together, which is very worth taking at. But like the thing, I think a lot and sorry. So one thing that links them is their high school education and how their academic backgrounds are so spectacular. Like Mr. Elon Musk, he went to Stanford and then even the greatest business school there is Wharton in Pennsylvania, while Mr. Phuong and Dai both went to very prestigious schools in Hanoi. But they didn't let that to be the peak of their personal development. They use those academic background as launching pads for their future to found their own country and to amass great wealth. So I think that really leads to a quote by Elon Musk that I found on Twitter. High school is not a peak nor a valley, it's a launching pad, befitting of a man who would foster his originally very small fascination with rocket science and use it to build a powerhouse in the aerospace industry. But in stark contrast to those men who have great education, I also have a fourth face, Mr. Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba in China. Well, this guy is notorious for a terrible academic background. In stark contrast to the students of Hanoi Amsterdam, who got at least a 8 or a 9 just to be able to enter AMS. Mr. Jack Ma got a score of 1, not even 10, out of 100 on his initial attempt in the Chinese university system. But I think all students of Hanoi Amsterdam could take a page out of his book of how he didn't let that bother him, but still use the knowledge he gathered during his time in high school, then university, to boost himself further and launch the powerhouse, the empire that is Alibaba today, and amass wealth as one of the richest men in China. Well, with those examples out of the way, I'd like to move on to, now then, how do you avoid peaking in high school? Now, I think this question is a bit impossible, actually, because nobody has a set path to success. Everybody have to carve their own staircase to personal success. And like, you can't copy Bill Gates' road of building Microsoft and such. If you copy exactly what Elon Musk do, there's no guarantee you'll be able to found something like Tesla or SpaceX. But I think what is equally valuable is a framework to determine their own future and build their own goals. My proposed one has 3 components. Starting with the first one being, you should build an endless goal. What do I mean by endless? I think most people have goals that are quite linear and limited. Like once you reach the finish line, you practically give up or think or are in the illusion that is, oh, we'll live happily ever after, right? For example, many people might have the dream to purchase a dream house worth of, for example, $200,000 to live happily ever after with their family. But I think that is most often, more often than not the case, since the fees and maintenance costs of a house, it makes the house a liability instead of an asset, and this goes the same way for many more dreams. So my proposed suggestion is that you should make it endless, like to constantly strive and better yourself instead of being complacent with whoever you are. But that is not to say you shouldn't be humble though, because with my second component is to build a pathway to success that has actionable steps. Like let's go back to the example before of buying a house. Instead of like just buying one house, you should amass as much wealth as possible to buy multiple houses for your extended family to live in, right? So how do you amass that much wealth? Well, I think it's you have to find your niche, the area of expertise, and truly excel upon that and develop yourself constantly. Like, let's take the example of investing, for example. You can't just think that, oh, if I go all in one stock and it will make me rich. That's more like gambling, that's more like poker than actually trying to build a steady financial future. Instead, you should divide it into different steps of like learning how to do a fundamental analysis, then a technical one, then also surveying the market to see which trends is currently happening. So the contrast between these 2 thinking styles, I think, can be also envisioned through either climbing up a slide, which is quite impossible, especially if they're trying to climb up from the height of floor 1 to floor 50. Of course, you can't climb a slide all up the way that high, but with stairs, but with actionable steps, there's nothing you can achieve with enough effort and enough stamina. And speaking of effort, that takes me to the third component, being that you have to build the resilience to continue, fight on, and never give up. This is quite a generic advice. I think people have heard it countless times throughout their lives, but it's a lesson that I think should never truly go away, because it's so instrumental in everyone's life. Like according to Angela Duckworth's book of Grit, result equals talent times effort, which means effort counts twice as much as talent, and you should constantly try to better yourself, because like in real life, I don't think there's really a pathway to success or somebody's graph of self-development that's a straight line going straight up, but instead there has to be a lot of fluctuations. And even though the parabola is quite an abstract shape, you might even see it in real life, like that ladder. So you have to build your resilience to continue fight on and never give up, no matter the circumstances. And I think those are the 3 components of building a framework that would build your own pathway to success. I hope all of you can apply this framework to your very own lives and achieve whatever you want most in life. Thank you for listening.
Hi everyone.